Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us.
Always fun.
Today, we're going to be looking into the murder of Franny Craig.
Yeah.
She was a young mom, just 28 years old, living in Jackson, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And back in August of 2014, her life was tragically cut short in a really brutal attack.
Yeah, it was really awful.
And what makes this case so fascinating is that Franny was this, beloved member of her community.
Right.
She didn't seem to have any enemies.
Yeah, seemingly no enemies.
Figuring out who would want to see her dead and why
Right.
is going to take us on a real roller coaster ride.
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting how this one unfolds.
Yeah.
You kind of think you know what's going on, and then it takes a real turn.
So to start off, I think let's paint a picture of Franny's life before all this happened.
Okay.
Everything we've gathered about her. She was the kind of person who just brought joy to everyone around her.
Yeah, she seemed like a really bright light.
She was engaged. She was really excited about the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
She was always the life of the party.
Mm-hmm.
Her friends even joked about her being a bridezilla.
Oh, really?
But in a, totally loving way, of course.
Yeah, of course.
And on top of all that, she was also a devoted mother to 3 kids.
3 young kids.
Yeah. It's just really hard to imagine why anyone would want to harm someone like that.
Yeah, you never know what's going on behind closed doors, though, right?
That's true.
But it is a stark contrast, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
this vibrant young woman and then this just brutal crime scene.
Yeah.
It was actually her fiancé, Eric, who discovered her body
Okay.
when he got home from working the overnight shift.
Okay.
So he had been at work all night and gets home and finds her on the bedroom floor.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And the really odd thing is at first he didn't even check on her.
What?
Yeah, he just saw her there and didn't really think anything of it.
Oh, that's so strange.
I know. But then later he found her in a pool of blood.
Oh, my gosh.
So that detail, that initial hesitation,
Yeah.
really raised some red flags for the investigators.
Yeah, I can definitely see why that would be
Mhm.
strange.
Yeah.
And then there's the 911 call.
Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely chilling.
It's hard to listen to.
Yeah, you could just hear the panic and the confusion in Eric's voice.
Yeah, you can tell that he's in shock.
Yeah.
Just repeating phrases like, she's dead, there's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just a really raw, unfiltered glimpse into a moment of pure terror.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the details of the crime scene just added to the unsettling picture.
Yeah.
I mean, Franny was found with zip ties on her wrists, a gag in her mouth, and over 90 stab wounds.
90.
90 stab wounds.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, the level of violence was just staggering. I mean, it just painted this picture of a frenzied attack fueled by just this rage that's hard to comprehend.
Yeah, so with a crime scene like that,
Yeah.
and then Eric's odd behavior,
Right.
it's not really surprising that he became the prime suspect.
Yeah, right away they honed in on him.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense why investigators would focus on Eric. You have this seemingly loving couple, but then these inconsistencies in his story.
Yeah.
He seemed strangely detached.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't showing the grief that you might expect.
Right.
And he even suggested that maybe Franny had taken her own life,
Oh, wow.
which, given the nature of her injuries, just seemed very unlikely.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
And then you add in some other details that came out later.
right.
Like the fact that Eric had been active on online dating sites right before Franny's death,
Yeah.
and then he failed a polygraph test.
Yeah, all that
Yeah.
really starts to build a case against him.
Yeah, it really does.
I mean, it creates a narrative, doesn't it?
Right.
But it's important to remember that a narrative, even a compelling one, isn't the same as proof.
Right.
They needed concrete evidence linking Eric to the crime.
So what did they do?
you- Well,
Did they just arrest him based on suspicion?
no, they conducted a very thorough investigation.
All right.
They meticulously checked his alibi. They searched for any sign of the zip ties.
Okay.
They examined his relationships, hoping to find a link.
Yeah.
But despite their efforts, there was nothing concretely tying him to the crime.
Wow. So they were just stuck.
Yeah.
A young woman is brutally murdered. Her family's desperate for answers.
Mhm.
And the police have a suspect who seems to fit the profile,
Right.
but they're missing that crucial piece of evidence.
Yeah, they had nothing.
It must have been incredibly frustrating for everyone.
It was weeks turned into months, and the case seemed to be going cold.
Yeah.
But then a breakthrough.
Uh,
Remember those zip ties found at the crime scene?
Yeah.
The ones that seemed like such a random detail?
Yeah.
Well, they turned out to be the key to unlocking the truth.
Okay.
DNA evidence from the zip ties was run through CODIS,
Okay.
the combined DNA index system, and it generated a hit,
Okay.
Cortez Butler.
Wait, can you explain how that works for those of us who aren't, forensic scientists?
Of course.
Yeah.
So CODIS is a national database that contains DNA profiles of convicted offenders
Okay.
and crime scene evidence. Think of it as a giant fingerprint file, but for DNA.
Yeah.
When a DNA sample is collected from a crime scene,
Yeah.
it can be compared to the millions of profiles in CODIS.
Okay.
And if there's a match, it can link a suspect to a crime
Wow.
or even connect different crimes together.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really powerful tool.
So in this case, the DNA on the zip ties matched someone in the system.
Exactly. And the match was Cortez Antonio Butler.
Okay.
And this discovery completely shifted the investigation
Okay.
because it turned out that Butler was a convicted murderer,
Oh.
recently released on parole.
Okay.
So now, instead of focusing on a grieving fiancé with some suspicious behavior,
Yeah.
they had a known violent offender linked to the crime scene.
Wow.
It seemed like they finally had their man.
That must have been a huge relief for Eric.
It sure was.
For finally have his name cleared.
Yeah.
But now the big question is, who is Cortez Butler?
Right.
And how does he fit into this whole puzzle?
Yeah, how does he fit in? Well, as they were struggling to find a connection between Eric and Butler, something kind of remarkable happened.
Okay.
Butler was arrested for a completely separate murder in Detroit,
Wow.
and this opened up a new opportunity for the investigators in Franny's case.
Oh, okay. So they finally had a chance to question him directly about Franny's murder.
Yes, but there was a catch.
Okay.
Butler agreed to talk, but only if the conversation wasn't recorded,
Oh, wow.
which was a risky proposition for the detectives.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Because accepting an unrecorded confession means it can't be used as evidence in court.
Right.
But they were desperate for any leads that could help them solve this case.
Yeah.
So they took the gamble.
Wow, that's a tough call.
Yeah,
I mean, on the one hand, you have a potential confession, but on the other hand, it can't be used in court.
right.
I guess they figured any information was better than nothing.
Exactly. And as it turned out, that gamble paid off in a big way. What Butler revealed in that unrecorded confession completely upended everything they thought they knew about the case.
Okay.
Remember how they were so focused on finding a connection between Butler and Eric?
Yeah.
Assuming it had to be a hit job?
Right. It seemed like the most logical explanation at the time.
Well, logic, as we often find in these cases, can be a deceptive guide.
Yeah, that's true.
Butler's confession revealed that Franny was never the intended target.
Oh, wow.
The real target was Ryan Marshall,
Okay.
Eric's friend who had been staying with them.
Right, right.
Remember Ryan's house had burned down
Yeah.
and he was staying with Franny and Eric while he got back on his feet?
So wait, this whole time, Franny was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It seems that way.
That's terrifying.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
The randomness of it all.
Yeah.
This young woman going about her life,
Mm-hmm.
completely unaware that she stepped into this, deadly game that has nothing to do with her.
Right.
And it all goes back to that fire at Ryan's house. It wasn't an accident, it was arson.
Okay.
Set by a man named Rodney McKe.
Arson. Okay. So
Yeah.
now we're adding another layer to this already complex story.
Right.
But why would Rodney McKe want to burn down Ryan's house?
Well, it turns out Ryan was going to be a witness against Rodney in the arson case.
Oh, wow.
And to prevent Ryan from testifying, Rodney decided to have him killed.
Okay.
He contacted his uncle, Clifford McKe,
Okay.
who had connections to, you guessed it, Cortez Butler.
Oh, wow. So it's like this chain reaction of bad decisions,
Right.
each one leading to a more devastating consequence.
Exactly.
So Butler was essentially hired to kill Ryan,
Right.
but he ended up killing Franny instead.
Precisely.
Wow.
It seems that Butler went to the house looking for Ryan, but he wasn't there.
Oh.
Instead, he found Franny.
Yeah.
And in a moment of just horrific violence, he took her life.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
You know, this whole situation really makes you think about the justice system.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the real killers were eventually caught and convicted.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that an innocent man like Eric was initially suspected just because of some circumstantial evidence,
Right.
it's unsettling.
It really is. It raises some important questions
Yeah.
about how we balance the need to investigate thoroughly with the presumption of innocence.
Right.
And this case really highlights the potential dangers of tunnel vision,
Mm-hmm.
where investigators become so focused on one theory that they miss crucial pieces of information
Right.
or alternative explanations.
Yeah, and how easily things could have gone a different way.
Absolutely.
If it weren't for that DNA match and Butler's confession, who knows how long it would take to unravel the truth.
Exactly.
Eric could have even been wrongfully convicted.
It's a sobering thought, and
Yeah.
it really underscores the vital role that forensic science plays in these modern criminal investigations.
Right.
In this case, the DNA evidence from those zip ties was the linchpin that connected Butler to the crime and ultimately exonerated Eric.
Okay, but let's back up for a second. You mentioned that Butler was a convicted murderer.
Yes.
What can you tell us about his background?
Well,
what kind of person agrees to take another person's life for money?
that's a question that criminologists and psychologists have been grappling with for a long time.
Yeah.
There's no single profile that fits every hitman.
Right.
But often we see a combination of factors, like a lack of empathy, a desensitization to violence, and a willingness to exploit others for personal gain.
I guess it's hard to imagine what kind of life experiences would lead someone down that path.
It's difficult to comprehend. I mean, taking a human life, reducing it to a business transaction, it's chilling.
It is. It really is. And it raises some important questions about rehabilitation and in the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
Was there anything in Butler's past that could have been addressed?
Right.
Any interventions that might have prevented him from taking this path?
It makes you wonder.
Yeah. And how do we balance the need to punish those who commit such heinous acts with the possibility of redemption and rehabilitation?
Right. Are people capable of change?
Yeah, those are big questions.
They are.
And I don't think they're easy answers.
Yeah, no, not at all.
It's a complex issue.
Very complex.
And each case is unique.
Yeah.
But, focusing solely on Butler's past and motives almost feels like we're losing sight of the real victim here.
You're absolutely right.
Franny's
the victim.
Yeah, her life was cut short. Her children lost their mother.
Right.
All because she happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It's crucial to remember that for Franny's loved ones, this isn't just a fascinating puzzle to be solved.
Right.
This is a devastating loss that will forever shape their lives.
Yeah.
The impact of this crime extends far beyond the individuals who are directly involved.
Right.
It ripples outwards, affecting families, communities, and society as a whole.
This case has been a real roller coaster of emotions.
It has.
From the initial shock and horror to the frustration of dead ends. And the relief when the real culprits were finally brought to justice.
A long and winding road.
Yeah. And yet there's still this lingering sadness, this sense of injustice, knowing that Franny's life was taken so senselessly.
It's a tragic reminder that even in a world where justice is served, there are wounds that never fully heal.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
But I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this complex and heartbreaking story.
You're right. We've explored the twists and turns of the investigation, the shocking revelations of Butler's confession, and the lasting impact of this crime on Franny's family and community.
Yeah.
But there's more to consider. We need to look at the role of chance.
Right.
And how seemingly random events can converge to create tragedy.
Yeah.
And we need to examine the ethical considerations that arise in cases like this, especially when dealing with unrecorded confessions and the potential for wrongful accusations.
Okay, so we'll delve into those aspects and share our final thoughts on this case after a short break.
Sounds good.
This case really gets you thinking,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's a stark reminder that sometimes, even with the best intentions, investigations can go astray.
Absolutely. And the initial focus on Eric, while understandable given the circumstances, really shows how easily tunnel vision can take hold.
Yeah, for sure.
And there were a lot of factors at play there. I mean, the brutality of the crime suggested a personal motive.
Right.
And then you have Eric's behavior, which, maybe due to shock or grief or whatever, didn't really fit the stereotypical image of a grieving fiancé.
Right.
So those inconsistencies, along with the online dating profile and the failed polygraph, created a very compelling narrative.
Yeah, it's like our brains are just wired to look for patterns, to create a story that makes sense of things.
Exactly.
But sometimes that drive to connect the dots can lead us down the wrong path.
Absolutely. And then that's why it's so important for investigators to constantly challenge their own assumptions.
Yeah.
To be willing to consider alternative explanations even when they seem far-fetched.
Right.
In this case, if they hadn't been open to the possibility that Eric was innocent, they might never have pursued the DNA evidence with the same rigor.
Right.
And the real perpetrators might have gotten away with murder.
It's a good reminder for all of us too, right?
Oh, yeah.
To be mindful of our own biases.
Absolutely.
And be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
In this case, it's amazing to think that something as seemingly insignificant as a zip tie could hold the key to solving the case.
It really highlights the power of forensic science.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, not only did the DNA evidence identify Cortez Butler as the perpetrator,
Right.
but it also cleared Eric's name.
Mm-hmm.
It provided that crucial piece of objective evidence that shifted the entire focus of the investigation.
But DNA evidence isn't a magic bullet, is it?
Right. Well, it's crucial to remember that forensic science, like any science,
Yeah.
is subject to human error and interpretation.
Right.
DNA evidence should always be considered within the context of other evidence and investigative findings.
Yeah.
It's a powerful tool, but it needs to be used responsibly and ethically.
So going back to Butler's confession, I mean, it was a risky move for the detectives to accept an unrecorded statement.
Right. It's a really tricky situation.
Yeah.
On the one hand, they were eager to get any information that could help them solve the case.
Right.
On the other hand, there's always the risk that an unrecorded confession could be coerced or misinterpreted.
Right.
In this case, the information Butler provided did lead them to the truth.
Yeah.
But it raises questions about the reliability of such evidence.
It's like a double-edged sword.
Mm.
You want to solve the crime and bring justice to the victim's family, but you also want to make sure that the process is fair.
Of course.
And that the rights of the accused are protected.
Absolutely.
It's a delicate balance.
A very delicate balance.
This case really forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the randomness of it all.
Yeah.
The fact that Franny was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It makes you question your own sense of safety and security.
It's a natural reaction. We all want to believe that we have some control over our lives, that we can protect ourselves and our loved ones from harm.
Yeah.
But sometimes tragic events happen that just shatter that illusion of control.
It's a reminder that life is precious
Yeah.
and fragile,
Yeah, it is.
and that we should cherish every moment.
Absolutely.
It also makes you wonder what can be done to prevent these tragedies from happening in the first place.
Right.
Are there any lessons we can learn from Franny's case?
Well, I think one of the most important takeaways is the need for greater awareness and understanding of the factors that contribute to violence.
Okay.
It's a complex issue, and there's no easy solution.
Right.
But by addressing issues like poverty, inequality, mental health, and access to education, we can create a society where violence is less likely to occur.
So it's not just about catching the bad guys after the fact.
Right.
It's about addressing the root causes of violence
Exactly.
to try to prevent these tragedies from happening.
It's about creating a culture of empathy and respect where differences are valued and conflicts are resolved peacefully.
Well, this deep dive has given us all a lot to think about.
It has.
The twists and turns of the investigation, the role of forensic science,
Yeah.
the ethical considerations,
For sure.
and the broader societal implications of this case.
Absolutely.
It's been a real journey.
It has, and while there's a sense of relief that the real perpetrators were brought to justice,
Yeah.
there's also just this profound sadness knowing that a young life was cut short so senselessly.
Franny Craig's story is a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of seeking justice while remaining mindful of the complexities of the human experience. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration into the depths of the human story.